Good afternoon. I'm Rob Grimes with the IFBTA, and I'm really pleased to do a Meet Our Member, one of the series. And our Meet Our Member is going to be with Chad Leedy, who is the head of strategic accounts and retail compliance for ControlCase, and they're an industry supporter member of the IFBTA. So welcome, Chad.
Thanks, Rob. Good to be with you again.
I think it's a very good point that you really have two types of customers. One is the operator themselves. And if they're sitting there thinking that they're not touching credit cards and payment, they are. Now, I could see how they might think they're not touching it because they'd say, well, I have this device or I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing and it's going somewhere else in the cloud, not coming through me. But they are, even if they hand the device to somebody, right? Because it's within their four walls and,
That's right.
There's lack of protection. So they need to understand that they're going to touch it one way or the other. Even if they only did online order, they're going to touch it. But the other side that's really very interesting is it must be a whole new world out there of empowering startups who are providing new applications that are being used within the industry, because there's no possible way they could do this without having somebody like you on board. So how do you approach them?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's funny. They're approaching us because they have to get a certification. If they're going to work with any merchant or any other technology provider, then they have to have these certifications because the other companies are going to ask for it. The first thing they're going to do is say, are you SOC compliant? Are you, do you have your ISO certification? So they're actually coming to us because they are required to have it. And interestingly enough, even if they're not required for some reason, like we do have companies that come to us that once we have a conversation, we're saying, actually you don't necessarily need to be PCI compliant in your specific situation. They're saying, you know what? I don't care. I want the certification because I want to be able to prove to companies beyond the shadow of the doubt that we did what we had to do to be secure. So you're right. The proliferation of all of these companies that are starting up, and they're all over the place globally. People are creating applications. Just it's really crazy how much technology is being.
There are a lot of people create applications that know nothing about the industry too. I have to scratch my head sometimes. Like, how'd you come up with this idea? Didn't you do your research? No, occasionally they got this little nugget of something that actually makes some sense. But there's really so much out there, and it really isn't just. Is it only about the payment transactions, or is it about a wider field than that? What are the other pieces that are involved to make that happen?
Well, it is beyond that because, as you know, if you've ever had any exposure to SOC or ISO, it becomes really beyond. It's beyond payments. It's really about securing data as a whole. So it could be how you're transmitting personal data, or the payment transport, or the transport of information. PII data is really becoming more valuable than credit card data. You look at the healthcare industry. The healthcare industry is really that next wave. The restaurant industry, it's funny, they really have been on the forefront and been very, very nimble, actually, compared to a lot of verticals. And now these other verticals are going to have to do what the restaurant industry did. They're going to have to.
Some people would say that the restaurant industry was nimble and on the forefront only because they weren't collecting as much data and didn't have as much of that personal information available to them as somebody like the healthcare industry, which is far more complex.
I do. That is a great point. And I do think that because of that point, the healthcare industry, they are definitely going to have a lot more complexity to get their arms around. And HIPAA is unlike PCI, is a government regulation. Right. So it's a different animal. But the point that I brought up is they do overlap, which is a good thing, because if you do have those multiple security frameworks to comply with, you want to work with a company that understands all of them and can make it a more efficient process. One of the things that is exciting about technology with us is we're also making assessments more efficient using AI and using other technology, because we're in the same boat. We want to be able to scale and even though we are a global company, we also have limited resources. We want to be able to use our resources in a way that allows us to scale.
Well, you want to be
faster.
able to point. There's too much data out there, so you want to be able to quickly take a look at all the data and come up with analytics and come up with some insights that it might take you just far too long. And what we do know is look at the amount of time it sometimes takes. I see it advertised all the time. They had a breach. It was 3 months ago. And we're only learning about it now. So the speed of technology and the speed of capturing this has to go up. You brought up a couple of points about the global nature of ControlCase and other industries. So what are the industry verticals that you guys specialize in?
It's so broad, Rob, because really anybody in any vertical or any industry that needs to assess, it could be government related, it could be retail, it could be healthcare. Pretty much any technology related company or a merchant that has to comply with a security framework is a customer of ours. I mean, it's funny to think that there are new frameworks that are even being created. Like CMMC is a relatively new framework that's in the government space. So we're not only expanding technology, the footprint of technology, we're still expanding security frameworks. So
let me just ask you about this. You specialize in the hospitality food service industry. Would that be a correct assessment?
That is definitely that this is really the industry that I focus in. Okay. I would say that was the reason I was brought to ControlCase. Is really that's my background.
So I'm going to bring us back to that. So let's just talk about. I'll be creative. We'll say hospitality, food service, maybe retail in here because they're all sort of related and we see each other at all the same thing. So that is your background. So what is it that makes ControlCase different in addressing those industries and possibly why you went to work there in the first place, right? No. But what does it make them different in their approach that these industries should be taking notice and that you're really providing a specialized service since you're such a large group doing so many?
Absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of assessors that focus on a lot of different things. And the reason I came to ControlCase is because of their partnership approach and the fact that they look at an engagement as a partnership. It's not just an assessment. And I think that the way, if you look at the hospitality and the food industry, it is it's a very tight-knit industry. Everybody knows everybody. Relationships are everything, which is obviously why I'm part of the IFBTA. Relationships and longevity of relationships are everything. And that's how ControlCase views their customers. They don't look at them as just numbers or contracts or even just assessments. They really take the time to understand their business model and understand what they're trying to accomplish so that they can become more efficient as they become more knowledgeable about their security standards. So, I didn't want to join a company that just churned and burned through their customers. I wanted to really build relationships and continue the relationships that I already had in this industry. I know a lot of people, and it was important to me to continue those relationships with a company that truly treated their customers well.
And you got to work with a company. If people are going to trust you, they got to trust the company you're with. And trust is probably a very key word in this. But let me follow through on something that you said at the very start of our conversation. You talked about that it's not just an assessment or an audit, and then that's it, you walk away. You also said something about educating the customer, helping them to understand how this fits. So going forward, when they have to do the next one, that's there. So how do companies with such fast evolution of technology within our industries, how do they keep up with the security, staying compliant within standards? And how are you educating them to stay up on that?
It's a great question, and probably the most important piece of our engagements. And I think the way that we accomplish that so well is our engagements are more than just the assessment. It's more than just looking at gaps, filling the gaps, and then doing the assessment. Our engagements are about a relationship throughout the engagement. So let's just say, it takes 3 to 4 months to complete an assessment. Well, that's not the end of our relationship. We're going to work with you to start preparing for the next year. And also, you're right, technology is going to evolve continuously. You need a partner that you can contact before you even make a technology purchase. And you need to be able to ask the questions of how this is going to affect your ecosystem and your scope. So I would suggest, and many of our customers do, that before they even make a purchase, a technology purchase, they run that by us. We whiteboard, we look at what the impact of that purchase is going to be. And it can save you a lot of time and money and surprises. You don't want to get
that
to
is
your
the true
assessment.
part of a relationship, right? And that's true part of a partnership where they come to you. Great. Well, thank you. This is Rob Grimes with the IFBTA and showcasing a Meet Our Member of ControlCase and having the pleasure of speaking with Chad Leedy today, the head of strategic accounts for retail compliance at ControlCase. And thank you for joining us. And until next time, have a great day.